The secret to happiness is to align with your soul's wisdom, but daily life often gets in the way. To keep you on your path, join Linda Manning, transformational coach and healer, for spiritual inspiration and interviews with amazing healers and teachers. If you are eager to connect with your soul, excited to travel on inner adventures, and are curious to learn from cutting-edge teachers, then this is the podcast for you.
Welcome back to the Trust Your Wisdom podcast. I'm so glad to have you here. This is Linda Manning, here to inspire you no matter what crazy stuff is going on in your life. And today I have a very special guest, my friend Malcolm Wellington. So let me tell you a little bit about Malcolm. Malcolm and I have known each other for about a year and a half. We are both personal development junkies. We're just trying to keep growing ourselves. And I met him in a course. And Malcolm was raised in the projects of East London. And I've been watching Call the Midwife, so I've been thinking a lot about East London. And after a difficult childhood, he married young, and by the age of 26, he had 2 children. Now we're going to fast forward, and by the early 90s, he had ended his 20-year marriage and was diagnosed with a life-threatening brain tumor. So big year for Malcolm, a lot of changes. And all these changes led to deep reflection and a decision to release the negative beliefs he had been holding. And we all know, listeners, that sometimes it takes a life crisis to actually do all of that self-reflection. But I want to encourage anyone listening, you don't need to wait for a life crisis to benefit from looking within and seeing what needs to be shifted. Okay, now back to Malcolm. Over the past 2 decades, Malcolm has studied with many outstanding teachers, including Rydall, and that's where we met, and Eben Pagan, who is known for his coach training. And he also has a diploma in therapeutic counseling. So Malcolm comes with a whole host of tools in his toolkit. In the past few years, Malcolm has focused on becoming a coach and stepping into his ideal life path. So his focus is coaching professionals, and I would call midlife professionals like 45 to 55, to believe in themselves so that they can have more meaning, joy, and success in their lives than they ever dreamed possible. Doesn't that sound good? So let me introduce you to a man who has gone from believing he was worthless to owning his power as a leader. So I'm very excited to welcome you, Malcolm Wellington.
Hey, Linda, great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. Okay, so Malcolm, tell me a little bit. I mean, you've had obviously a long path that you've been on, but I want to start more recently with your coach training. So tell me a little bit about your career path. Like, how did you end up from wherever you were? What was your career path all the way to becoming a coach?
Well, it's been a long journey, Linda, which began a while ago. So I'll start with the real defining moment for me, which was back about 3 years ago. And for about 15 years, probably, I'd read hundreds of books on personal development and health and wellness and things like that, biographies. But I read one particular book I read in the summer of 2018 was a book around a lady who started her own coaching business, and she was a coach, and she's now a New York Times best-selling author. But when I read that book, it was like, I want to be a coach. I want to be a coach.
So you had one of those like wake up call moments, it sounds like, where you had that aha.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd had a few of those by that time, and a lot more since. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And so what happened when you had that aha moment? What were you doing at the time before you became inspired to be a coach? What was your career?
So this was 2018. I moved from the UK to Vancouver, Canada in 2000. And when I came there, I wanted to be a counsellor. My qualifications in the UK would have permitted me to be a counsellor, but I was now in Canada and it wasn't good enough for their qualification system. So for one reason or another, I decided not to pursue it. So I pretty much, for 18 years maybe, I didn't really have a career because it was important to me at that time that I had a career that I loved and I enjoyed, got me excited, rather than just for a paycheck like I'd had back in the UK before I got sick in the mid-90s. So I was just enjoying life in Vancouver. I've been through so many changes by that point. Anyway, long story short, Linda, I didn't have a career then. I didn't know what life had in store for me.
Mm. So you didn't have a career, but then you had a calling. It sounds like there was
It very much felt like a calling. It felt that was in my awareness for a long time before then. There's something here, but I don't know. Maybe I was trusting. I don't know why I was in that period of kind of a plateau, a hiatus. There's probably many reasons, but the important thing is I did feel there was a calling. There was meaning to my mess, to my suffering.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because a lot of times people don't, they question, why am I suffering? Or they feel like it doesn't have meaning. And I'm a big believer that when we can actually excavate our suffering and learn and grow from it, it's our most powerful teacher.
100%, absolutely agree, Linda. Yeah, it's so beneficial. Well, it has been for me. I'd invite anyone to consider that, contemplate that, because yeah, it's definitely been true for me.
Yeah. So Malcolm, I want to take you back a little bit to when you got ill, to what happened. So tell me about, so were you married at the time, or had you already gotten divorced when you
So I was already 3 years before Linda. My marriage ended, and it was a very distressing time, very distressing. And I was a mess for a couple of years. And then I realized what I'm doing isn't serving me, and I'm not being a good role model as a father to my two sons, one of whom is still at home. The other one was living a couple of blocks away. But the main thing was I began to get back on track a little bit. And then literally a year later, I was hit with the diagnosis of I've got a life-threatening brain tumor. So I had the universe hit me with two massive wake-up calls.
Yeah. So what was your response when you got this diagnosis of the brain tumor? What happened?
I mean, it started with a visit to the doctor 10 months before because I had a little problem with hearing, and to get that diagnosis after various tests and things that I'd gone through to find out what was going on, and I thought it was something very simple. Anyway, it was a big, huge shock. I mean, I was like, oh my goodness.
I bet. So with all of that you've gone through around having that brain tumor, what are some of the gifts? What are some of the things that how did it help you learn and grow?
It was so. We know this phrase that Derek uses, our coach in the coaching program, me and Linda are in. It's plan your life as if you're doing all the work and live your life as the universe is. I had no plan when I went through that experience. When I began to turn a corner, I had there was something I wanted to achieve, a vision, a goal, and that was to get my life back. I mean, that was my desire. I want my life back to how it was before this
And
crap happened.
I'm wondering if before the brain tumor, whether you were thinking, I don't want this life. And then once that life was taken away, you're like, oh, actually, I do want it.
I wanted a better life. I wanted a different life. I saw who I was. I began, it was a process, Linda. It wasn't, it didn't happen overnight. But
Right.
my thought, but what I'm saying is that the journey that I was about to embark upon was based on my vision, my mindset that I want my life back, because my life was literally blown up. First of all, when the marriage ended, and then even more so back to back when I had the diagnosis and I went through all the therapy and rehabilitation, because I can walk, can do anything at my worst. And so I was digging myself out of the hole I was in bit by bit, step by step, but with the goal of getting my life back. When I say my life, I don't mean I want my life like it was, because it wasn't working, right?
Right.
But I want my life back, that I can walk and I can do all the things I could do before. I could hold down a job, I can walk, I can go to the gym, whatever it was. And then, but I knew then that all that I'd been through, so it's very clear to me, I'll wrap this part up, that when I got back to work part-time initially and then eventually full-time, and I've probably been away from my job maybe 2 years, and things had changed. It got new owners, so the philosophy was different. Wasn't the job I left, and it felt like literally I was in prison and I need to escape. And I did. I made my escape plan.
So that job that you had that started to feel like it was very different and it felt like you were in prison
Oh yeah.
and you had to break out.
Yeah.
And is that how you ended up moving to Vancouver?
So again, so I did escape at the end of August 1998, and with an intention to start. I'd already been studying psychology to be a counsellor part-time in the evenings after my work. And then I went, so I had a strategy. I enrolled in this full-time diploma in therapeutic counselling course. And again, when I wanted to be a counsellor in the UK, I had no idea at that time, September 1998, that I'd be anywhere else. But guess what? July 2000, I'm in Vancouver. So there were little steps, little breadcrumb moments. One thing led to another. And then, oh, I'm in Vancouver, right? So it wasn't a plan. Again, it wasn't a plan. I'm going to be in Vancouver, Canada. I mean, that wasn't on my
But
radar.
how did you end up in Vancouver then? How did that transpire?
Okay, so again, it was the universe. I saw one day, I'm walking, probably a year later, around 1999, or it may have even been the late night, it's 98, but it's not important. So I saw a flight to Toronto, Canada, and I thought, oh, I'd love to go to Canada. That's such a cheap price, and let's go. So on the way back, I'm talking to the guy sitting next to me, and he had emigrated from Wales in the UK to Canada 10 years before. And it put a seed in my mind. It planted the seed. Oh, maybe I can do that. And my father was born in Canada, and he was a British Canadian. So I applied for citizenship.
So you sat next to someone, he explained what he did, and there was a spark that lit up in you. that said, oh, that sounds really good. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing, Malcolm, is that you are highly intuitive. And that when you are in alignment with and listening to your intuition, magical things kind of open up, and maybe not at the pace you want, or, we all struggle with wanting things instantly, right? At least I speak for myself. It's hard sometimes to have the patience for things to unfold, but that your life experience really shows you that things do unfold for you and have unfolded for you.
And the point, yeah, that's a great point, Linda. And for me, it's always, if I want something badly enough and I feel it's possible, I play full out. I really go for it. I really go for it. If it, it's got to resonate with me at a deep level.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whether that's to, get my life back. I feel, wow, there's an opportunity. There may be an opportunity. There's nothing to lose here. What? Apply for citizenship. If I get it, then the door could open for me there. I've got choices. Because I always love to have choices and options. I'm sure many of us love that. It's not like we're in a box. We've got no choice, or we feel there's no way out. When you hope for making a difference in your life, or like me now, wanting to make a difference in not only my life, but to make a difference in the lives of people I touch along the way. So yeah, so I'm very, so the intuition part for me is when it feels at a deep level within me, I want that. Let's go for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And this podcast, of course, is called Trust Your Wisdom. And I'm really hearing you as a great model of trusting your wisdom. You didn't always know what the plan was going to be. You didn't have like, oh, I want to live in Canada in 10 years, but you listened and evolved and went with your gut around these opportunities. When you felt that strong yes, you just followed it.
Yeah. And I've learned, since then, that trusting your heart, trusting your gut, trusting your inner wisdom is better. We know that the head can screw us over. We try and think our way to success or whatever, but that deep inner knowing, what resonates with us, it really lets you down. I've discovered that, on my journey.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you. So Malcolm, you have, in following your path and following your calling, you decided to become a coach. And I'm curious, what did you learn about coaching, or about yourself, or about clients from your coach, your coach certification process? What was it? What really drew you to that? And what did you learn about yourself?
The main thing I learned was I'd learned who I was when I did my counseling course, because they focused half of the course on personal development and then tied that into the various coaching modalities, counseling modalities, whether that's Freud or Rogers or whatever. But it was interesting to me that in the last 3 years, for 3 or 4 years, or 3 or 4 years, as I've learned what skills you need to be a very good coach, I realized that my program, that I'm not good, and the core thing with me was I'm not good enough, don't have any value. That the counseling course only for me changed my perception that, oh my goodness, that's why I was like I was, because of my father or mother or whatever. But so it changed me a little. But
Mm-hmm.
the change in me from version 1 of me to the Malcolm I am now and are still becoming and still evolving into, because it's the journey never ends, is I'm a different person now.
Mm.
My program, that internal program of mine, has begun to really shift. So doing everything. I'm acting differently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm responding differently. I'm just, yeah, it's taken it to another level. And I actually was because of that, I felt really, that's really interesting, because at the point I was, and then when I came to Canada, I graduated in early 2000, or mid 2000, and came to Canada. And then I read books on self-development, personal growth, and I began. So unconsciously, I'm learning all this stuff. It's all in my awareness. And then what was really interesting to me, because coaching for me, the only experience I'd had of coaching was I love soccer,
Uh-huh.
football
Yeah.
in the US.
That's a
So,
different kind of coaching for sure.
but I learned more about psychology and who I was from my coaching program than I ever did. Well, and that's maybe not fair, but it was an addition to that, and it changed me. It changed me, and I never believed, wow, I'm learning how to be a coach. I never dreamed that part of that was spiritual work. You can't do this work without being spiritual, I believe. And number two, it really got in touch with, okay, I found out who I was. I don't have to live that way anymore. I can be a different person, I can be a star of my movie, another an extra. I can
Mhm.
change the story. I can change the story, turn the page on, that's the end of my chapter. Now I'm in the middle of creating a new story. And that's the evolved way that I've been doing that. So my story about myself that I am not good enough now is I am good enough, and it's reflected in better health, better, the main one, better relationships.
Great. Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, what have you noticed has shifted for you since you've changed your story? I'm a huge believer, really big, that stories matter a lot. The stories that we tell ourselves, about our life experiences, completely show up in our lives. So if we tell ourselves, I'm not good enough, that's going to show up. You will
Yeah,
find some way to make it, to prove that you're right. I think we all want to be right.
yeah.
And
Exactly. It was like, for me, using the typical example for me of, going back to when um, I was before I was married, and it was always when you don't believe you have value or you don't feel you're good enough, you
Mhm.
always come from and the energy of, I don't want to be rejected, and
Right.
you're not confident, you're not, so you believe you're not good enough, and then you ask someone out and you're really scared, you need a few beers maybe to give you that false confidence, and then you still kind of maybe got that I'm not good enough, but energy you're putting out there. And guess what? Maybe you do get rejected most of the time, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's change your story, change your life. And
Yeah.
it's so important that we get ourselves, number one, in the right energy mindset of, not life sucks until you die. You get up as best you can each day, get up in a good state. Don't, the first thing I used to do, switch on the news. I mean, that is all doom and gloom. How does that serve you? But if you put something on, maybe it's inspiring music, start your day with something that inspires you, that you love, and puts you in a good state. Then when you tell yourself, in addition to that, a different story, not I suck or life sucks and then you die. But life is amazing. I'm so happy to be here. And it's not about denying, it's just reframing the negative into a more something that's going to serve you rather than do you a disservice. Yes, it's hard. Not always easy, but is it worth it? Absolutely. Because changing my story, Linda, has changed my life along with the work. It takes work.
Yeah. But, it's great when you have that. When you've had that experience, you have that model for yourself of what's possible when you change your story.
Yeah.
So you said a couple things I wanted to just circle back on. And one is about starting your day with inspiration. I love that. And I'm wondering, you talked about a few things, but do you have some specific things that you like to do? Because I know for me, honestly, sometimes first thing in the morning is one of the roughest times of the day. I wake up, I'm not always feeling inspired. And my habit is to listen to a guided meditation that usually shifts my mood, do some yoga that usually helps. So I've got my ways that I try to kind of get into the positive space in the morning, because I agree with you. It's really important. What are some of the things that you do or other suggestions that you have that you've noticed for other people that help them get inspired first thing in the morning?
So it's whatever resonates with you. Like you chose yoga and meditation, Linda. That works for you. That wouldn't work for me. But I do use, when you say meditation, I do spend maybe 20 or 30 minutes contemplating just things, asking the universe for guidance of what you can serve me today to, whatever it is I'm desiring, how can that serve and give me guidance? And then, I start the day with a nutritious breakfast, all organic, which is important to me, to eat clean. And maybe while I'm having breakfast, like in the old days, I would watch the doom and gloom.
Okay, so we took a little break there for audio purposes, and now we're back. So Malcolm, you became certified as a coach, and I love how you described for you personally that you had one journey when you were studying counseling and a very different journey when you were studying coaching. And I know, I've known you for a while, that part of your transformation has been around feeling not worthy, or, and you can use your own words, to feeling much more confident. And I would love to hear, and I think the listeners would love to hear, how did you go from feeling not worthy to feeling more confident? What was that journey like?
Well, that journey was challenging in some ways. I had good experiences, not so good experiences, but it was just taking that one step at a time. And by doing that, because I knew that, for example, to be on video, or I needed to show, whether it's even being just showing up on audio, because what I wanted involved being on audio, or later being on video. That if I want to get what I want, which, like I said to you, if I'm of that mindset, I really want it, I will do whatever it takes. So that was the desire for me. It's that when our desire for what we want overrides our fear, then that was what I did step by step. First of all, on audio, I'd raise my hand on a call, and then I would get picked, and so I kept doing that consistently, and it was a process, and I evolved through that process into becoming the man that was destined to be.
So I'm hearing you say, Malcolm, is that really focusing on your vision and what you desire helped you walk through all of your fears that were getting in the way of having what you wanted.
Exactly right, Linda. Yeah, that's at the core. That was it. Yeah.
And so, again, as we're, in terms of listeners, for them to think about, because I think almost all of us have fears, right? And, when we let them stop us, and probably we all do that to a certain extent, then we pay a price for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the costs involved for me were huge. I paid huge price for it. And what's the core of this? What's really interesting? I'm trying to think, how can I help to give an example of how we can reframe the story. And excuse the background noise, there's people outside. It should go in a minute, but
don't worry about it. Go ahead.
The main thing here is I'll use this analogy. Right now, we're in times of COVID. We've been here for 2 years, and masks and viruses. Okay, so people wear, we're told to wear a mask, and it's because there's a virus. Now, for me, we've been wearing masks, or I've been wearing a mask for years. I used to, right? I wanted to show up as the good guy, the nice guy, to be liked, and I hid myself from myself. So I was wearing a mask, and also,
but you don't mean a physical mask, then, right? You mean a emotional mask.
Yeah, and the core one, the real big one, the virus, is the program we have carry in our mind many times from childhood. That in my case, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. That was the program, and that, like you touched on when we talked earlier, that's what I created in my life. So you've got to change the program. So you've got to, like me, I knew who I was. Now I'm learning to be different, and I am different. I'm huge, and there's still more work to do, because this journey never ends.
Right. It's the perpetual journey. Absolutely.
And so that's better. And also I know this stuff works. If you work it, it works. It's like anything.
Right. So when you say that, Malcolm, when you say it works if you work it, and that's certainly a phrase I'm familiar with, what's some of your process? What is some of the work that you do, for example, to help change your own story?
It's always, for me, Linda, the inner game. The inner game. So what is the story I'm telling myself? Is that serving me anymore, or doing me disservice? What's going on here? Awareness, right? So as I've learned more and more about me, and more about personal growth, personal development, all the things that we know, and it's not about just knowing, because I've been the perpetual student. You educate yourself, and you can keep doing that, but unless and until you put it into practice, all this learning is doing nobody any good. It's not doing you good, or people you're going to serve. So it's having that awareness. And when you have that awareness, you can begin to change the program. And it takes time, because many of us have been living that old story, that old program for decades. I was living that for 5 decades or more. And so you can't change overnight. So it's a process. But bit by bit, step by step, like a baby, right? How does a baby do that? It's so simple. So, and then you look at your life and you think, what's working? What's working? Do more of that. And what's not working? Do less of that. It's like not rocket science. So we can sometimes make things more complicated for ourselves. But it's that aware. The core takeaway for me is, and hopefully it's going to serve your listeners, is to become aware. What's my program? Who am I? Who is Dave or Sue? What is my identity? How do I see myself? We all know others. We look at them and we say, this, that, and the other. But do we go and be a scientist on ourselves? How do we come across? So yeah, to have that awareness is key. Knowing who you are. Because like me, I never knew who I was, never knew how to be a husband, never knew how to be a father. Now I've learned more who I am, and I can, by knowing who I am and my old story that wasn't true, it was learned from my parents. That I'm not good enough, judge, criticism, whatever. We all know what you can learn, you can unlearn. And that's what I've been doing. Untying the chains that bound me, the backpack, all the crap that I was carrying from childhood, and the chains, like a prisoner, chained,
So it sounds like, if you were gonna give one tip, like let's say there's a listener who's like, oh, I want to change my story or I want to get to know myself better.
Right.
What would be one step or one, action that they could take, or one thing that worked for you? I know there's probably many, many things, but we'll just keep it simple. So what's one next step that someone could take?
Okay. So the two things that I wanted to share about that, and there are many actions people can take.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's also important that people know that they are more powerful than they think, and if they want something, I would say, look at it from what can I do? So, but the main thing for me, what was it that came up? Lost it now. It was around that mindset, something to do. Yeah, that, whether it's a book, just something. Oh yeah, it's the story, right? We know this, but we have to do the work on ourselves. So what's the story? So the listener could say to themselves, what is the story about me? What do I believe about me, of who I am? And then how am I creating that day by day in the world? How am I living what I believe? And then when you know the answer to that, or have more clues around that, you can find out, okay, is that true? Is that really true?
Yeah.
I'm not good enough, using my example. Is that true? Right. So to begin with that, and whether that's a book or whatever, you start to unravel, peel back the analogy of the onion, layer by layer, bit by bit, and eventually you'll get insights along the way. You'll have breakthroughs. It's a process, but just begin with like that phrase, begin with the end in mind, and just take it step by step, like I did when I learned to walk again in my 40s. Step by step, literally. So that's what I would say. And on the way, be very kind to yourself. It's not about, I didn't do it this day or whatever, and then judging yourself, but be kind to you, because most of us, especially when you don't believe in yourself and you're not good enough, you're very harsh. You're more critical of yourself than anyone else could ever be. So
true.
Stop that negative self-talk, that inner villain in your head that keeps wanting to say, no, Malcolm, no, Linda, no, Sue, no, Bob, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? And then you get into who do you think you are, Malcolm, to be a coach? I've had that going on. But now I've got awareness around it. I know about, why that, who do you think you are comes up, because so start with that. Who do you believe you are? Ask yourself the question honestly.
Yeah. And then really, and questioning, is that really true?
Yeah.
Questioning those negative thoughts. Yeah, that's very powerful mindset work, because we all know that, how we think about things creates our reality.
Exactly.
So if we think that we're not worthy, then we're going to create a reality that proves that we're not worthy.
Yeah.
And if we believe that we have something of value to offer, then we're going to see that reflected back. Maybe not instantly, maybe not in 5 minutes, although it could be, right? Because the universe supports us.
Mm.
That's what I believe.
Again, the name of your podcast, Trust Your Wisdom.
Yep.
Your inner wisdom, your inner GPS, whatever you want to call that,
Mhm.
knows knows the truth. We know the truth when we hear it. And excuse my language, we know bullshit when we hear it. We know inner wisdom. So, like you say, Linda, trust your wisdom.
Uh-huh. Well, like all of us, right? Like my biggest challenges are what I get to learn. So my pathway towards trust has always been a bit challenging sometimes. Like I want to trust so much, but do I always? Not always. So it's a growth. It's a process that I'm certainly in, and I imagine many people. It can be really challenging sometimes, even when we know on a deep level that we're supported and that there's so much for us. Really living in that place of trust is a stretch.
It's a big stretch, especially, excuse me, especially like me, when we learn at a very young age that we can't trust. I learned I'm on my own. I can't trust my mum and dad to be there for me. And then it was I can't trust people. So in the word trust, there's the US, us, like trust. So always look at that. It's about us. So you don't just trust anybody but you use discernment and
Right.
wisdom. Who can I trust? So it's about us. Maybe that's me and you, Linda, or whoever, that we trust and we can move forward on the basis of trust. Like we trusted Derek, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we resonated with him at a deep level. We felt we could trust him. So it's not about trusting anyone, it's trusting ourselves, trusting others, trusting life. And that's it's hard, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
But from my experience, Linda, and my life and the changes that I've gone through, and I've been through them all, and I'm still going through them. I
Yeah.
still have days where I question things and but at the end of the day, a journey from where we are to where we want to go doesn't go up in a straight line. There's no straight line to success, very, very rarely. There's challenges on the way. There's successes, there's challenges, there's dips, there's highs. But as long as that journey is generally going upward and not downwards, again, it's back to your inner wisdom. You know what works, you really know. But the program, the belief we have around ourselves is the sabotaging one. That's the one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas. One
Right.
foot on the gas, what we want, one foot on the brake. Oh, if I get that, whatever's going to happen, or what we think is going to happen.
Right. All those fears and about being too big, taking up too much space, being found out as a fraud, right? We could probably list all of the things that come up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Malcolm, is there any last messages anything that I didn't ask you that you want me to, or anything message that you want to leave the listeners with?
Okay. Well, I've offered, there's a book, and maybe you can share it afterwards, but one of the many books that I read recently was around my area of being not good enough, lack of confidence, was The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Dr. Nathaniel Branden. And in that book, the 2 things he said that are crucial to having more self-confidence are, number 1, that when you feel confident, you feel you can handle anything life throws your way.
Mm-hmm.
You can handle anything. You're not a victim, you can handle it. I didn't have so much of a problem with that because all my life I spent digging myself out of a hole. But the second thing was, you believe in your program at a core deep level, you believe you deserve to be happy, successful in your health, in your career, relationships, maybe finance, but the core areas, you deserve it just because you're you.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, and that book was another book that was another piece that, yeah, it's that's serving me. I trust that book. That resonates with me, or I like that book. So whatever it is for you, it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's my message. Believe in you. You deserve it. Give yourself permission.
Right. Because as we know, like many people maybe grow up with the messages that, if you, like, maybe it's arrogant if you think too highly of yourself, or, that you're not worthy of thinking too highly of yourself.
Yeah.
So, so to really peel that away, let that go, and step into trusting yourself and honoring yourself more.
Yes, Linda, absolutely. Trusting yourself more, honoring yourself more, change your story, change your life. And you can do that step by step. You can't lose 20 pounds in a day. It takes a little while to lose 100 pounds, but when we see that the choices we're making are beneficial, then that evidence gives you the momentum to keep doing that. And yes, we'll have challenges along the way, but believe in you. Believe in you.
Believe in you. Okay, well, on that excellent note, that the importance of, change your story, change your life, and believing in yourself. And again, I'll just say, having known Malcolm for about a year and a half and seeing him apply all of these things to his life and really make changes is very inspiring. So if you felt inspired by Malcolm's story, that he went through everything from a brain tumor that had him not able to walk, to following his intuitive messages, and really, even if they meant moving to a different part of the world, but really just following that guidance. And part of his guidance was to become a coach. And through his coaching studies and practice, learning to change his story, to change his life, and learning to wake up in the morning and get inspired. So those are some powerful lessons. So thank you so much, Malcolm. And listeners, I hope that you feel inspired, that you're willing to take that one step, so that you can look at what is working in my life and focus on that. And what are the stories that I'm telling myself? Are they serving me? Are they kind? And if not, what would be a different story? So those are some great words of wisdom. And thank you so much, Malcolm. It was great to get to know you even better and to talk to you.
Thanks, Linda. It was great to have the conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, listeners, come back for another episode soon. And who knows what topics we'll explore. Always exciting.
Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to leave a review and share this podcast. To learn more or to book a personal session with Linda, go to innerclarity.biz or click the link in the show notes. And may you always trust your wisdom.